Welcome back, little children, and in today's video, as you saw by the title, we're going to be reading Beauty and the Beast, Getting to Know You from the Happily Ever After storybook. But before we do, make sure you like this video and that you're all tucked in into your nice comfy beds. Let's begin. Belle placed a blanket over the sleeping beast as Mrs. Potts, the teapot, Cogsworth, the metal clock, and Lumiere, the candle broom, looked on. Maybe the beast has a heart after all, thought Belle. That day, he had rescued her from a pack of wolves, even though the beast was angry with Belle for leaving the castle. He had risked his life to save hers. Maybe I could try harder to be his friend, she told herself. Everyone was hopeful that Belle and the Beast would fall in love. So the spell cast by an enchantress that had turned the castle's inhabitants into household objects, and the prince into the beast, would be broken. Then they would be human again. That night, as Belle sat by the fire reading, Mrs. Potts gathered Lumiere, Cogsworth, and her son Chip, and went to find the beast. He was in the west wing, gloomily staring at the rose the enchantress had left behind. "Master, isn't it such a chilly night?" she said. "Why not have a nice hot drink in front of the fireplace? I'm sure Belle would love some company." "I'm sure she doesn't want my company," the beast grumbled. Now, come along," insisted Mrs. Potts. "You never know. Surely it's better than being shut up here all by yourself." Relentlessly, the beast followed. He stomped into the sitting room and settled into a chair. "Good evening," Belle said. The beast did his best to smile as he picked up his cup of cocoa. Belle went back to reading until she was startled by a loud slurp. She looked over at the beast, who had a large chocolate mousse on his shaggy face. After a nudge from Mrs. Potts, the beast stopped slurping and slammed in his chair. Mrs. Potts tried to change the subject. "Why don't you read to us, dear?" she suggested to Belle. "All right," replied Belle. She turned to a new story in the collection of fairy tales she was reading. "Once upon a time, there was an old woodcutter," Belle began. "That sounds so boring," interrupted the beast. "Perhaps if you were more patient," Belle said. But Mrs. Potts gently interrupted. "Isn't there another story you could tell us?" she asked. Belle flipped through the pages until she found a tale filled with fire-breathing dragons and brave knights. The beast sat on the edge of his chair, listening to every word. It pleased Belle to see that the beast enjoyed a good story as much as she did. She also noticed that when he drank his cocoa, he was careful not to slurp. The next day, Lumiere and Cogsworth decided to play matchmaker too. "What a beautiful day for a walk," Cogsworth exclaimed after breakfast. Belle and the beast looked out the window. It was gray, cold, and windy. Belle looked bewildered. "Do you really think so?" she asked. "What's the point of taking a walk?" challenged the beast. "Walking is useful only when you have somewhere to go." But before Belle and the beast knew it, they were bundled up and hurried outdoors. "There's nothing more romantic than a walk in the snow," said Lumiere dreamily as he watched the two disappear into the woods. The Beast and Belle walked along in uncomfortable silence. When they came to a mud puddle, wide and deep, Belle stood there, deciding how to make it across without becoming completely drenched. "A gentleman will carry me over, or at the very least spread his cloak across it," Belle thought, suppressing a giggle at the very idea. Clearly the Beast would do neither. "Oh well, here goes," Belle said to herself as she wended across the puddle. Her skirt, coat, and boots were soon covered in mud. The wind picked up, and all at once it started to snow. "It looks like a bad storm is coming," the Beast warned, looking up at the darkening sky. "We would better get back while we can still see where we're going." Quite unexpectedly, the Beast took Belle's hand. "Follow me," he commanded, leading her through the blizzard. Belle was relieved when a few minutes later they arrived safely at the castle. Lumiere and Cogsworth were watching out the window as the two approached, Belle's hand firmly grasping the Beast's paw. "How romantic!" exclaimed Lumiere. A few minutes later, Mrs. Potts and the wardrobe were helping Belle out of her muddy clothes. "It looks as if you and the Beast are getting to know each other better," said Mrs. Potts. Belle hesitated. "I suppose," she answered. "There's so much about him that's gruff and rude, yet he's full of surprises." In another part of the castle, Cogsworth and Lumiere were helping the Beast dry off. "Did you have a nice time?" Cogsworth asked. "Well," the Beast began, "Belle can be rather boring and proper, but then she walked through the mud without complaining. And she didn't act scared at all when we got caught in the storm. She's kind of surprising." That afternoon, Mrs. Potts prepared a lovely lunch and served it in the greenhouse. She thought the beautiful room was the perfect romantic setting for the pair's bonding friendship. "Remember, Master," Lumiere said to the Beast, "beforehand, young ladies appreciate politeness." "Try to be understanding, Belle," begged Mrs. Potts before Belle went into the greenhouse. "The Master's manners aren't always what they should be, but he's trying." The dining companions entered the greenhouse and sat stiffly at the table. Belle forced a smile, and the Beast managed an unconvincing grin. Both were tired of trying to be on their best behavior. When Mrs. Potts had gone, the Beast began to devour a chicken leg, and after, Belle made a big display of picking up her napkin and placing it in her lap. The Beast hurriedly grabbed his own napkin and did the same. "Isn't this lunch delicious?" asked Belle. "Mm-hmm," answered the Beast, his mouth stuffed with food. Just then, the Beast noticed his napkin on the floor as he ducked down to retrieve it. He knocked the table over, sending the lunch crashing to the floor. A roll even flew off his plate and landed in Belle's lap. Even the Beast knew throwing food was not polite. He was about to apologize when he saw a playful smile spread across Belle's face. To his surprise, she pitched the roll right back at him. When Mrs. Potts, Lumiere, and Cogsworth came to check on the pair, they wouldn't believe their eyes. Food was everywhere, and even more particular, Belle and the Beast were laughing. "What's going on?" Cogsworth whispered. He pushed the door open a bit more so they could all get a better look. "Maybe they're in love," Lumiere said hopefully. "When people fall in love, they always seem to behave a bit strangely." Mrs. Potts smiled knowingly. "I think they discovered what we forgot the real way to make friends. To make friends is to relax and be yourself." That night, Belle and the bees shared a perfectly wonderful dinner. Afterwards, Belle patiently taught the beast how to dance. He listened carefully to everything she told him, and soon the two were gliding across the dance floor in step with each other at last. Alright, little children, that's the end of today's story, but I hope you will stay tuned for our next reading about Aladdin and Jasmine. And I'll announce the title tomorrow, or the day after tomorrow, one of the two. But I hope you enjoyed it, and I hope I'll see you guys all next time. Good night, and sleep well and tight in your beds, little children.